What if Rosa Parks had not said no on that city bus in 1955? Would that have changed anything in the history of America? In Montgomery, Alabama. It's December 1st, 1955. A tired seamstress, a woman who had spent all day at work, is sitting quietly on a city bus. The bus fills up, and the driver tells her to move so a white man can take her seat. In that split second, when most people would bow their head and move away, she doesn't. She says no. That single word, that single act, lit a fire that would change America forever. What followed was not just a protest, not just a boycott, but a movement that would shake the foundations of racial segregation, led by an unknown young preacher. But before we dive into the storm that followed, let's rewind and understand the world Rosa Parks and others were living in. The buses in Montgomery, Alabama, were a symbol of segregation. Black passengers had to pay at the front, then get off and re-enter through the back door. If the bus filled up and a white passenger needed a seat, black passengers were expected forced to stand up and move, no matter how tired they were. The law backed this humiliation. Imagine working 10 or 12 hours a day, then being told your dignity was less than the comfort of someone else simply because of your skin color. People endured it daily, and frustration had been building for years. Rosa Parks herself was no stranger to civil rights. She was active in the NAACP, and she had seen injustice her whole life. But on that December evening, she made a choice. She would not move. Now, Rosa Parks wasn't the first black passenger to resist bus segregation. In fact, earlier in 1955, a 15-year-old girl named Claudette Colvin had refused to give up her seat. Others had to. But in Rosa Parks, the community saw the right person, at the right moment. She was respected, dignified, and her story was impossible to dismiss. When she was arrested, word spread fast. The black community in Montgomery had had enough. They said, no more buses. No more humiliation. They would walk, carpool, or find any other way, but they would not ride those buses until the system changed. That was the beginning of the Montgomery Bus Boycott. Here's where the story spirals into something far greater. To organize this massive boycott, the community needed leadership, and this is where destiny stepped in. A young pastor, just 26 years old, barely known outside his congregation at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, was asked to step forward. His name, Martin Luther King Jr. He was new, educated, well-spoken, and crucially not yet seen by the white establishment as a threat. Nobody could have predicted that this quiet preacher would become the voice of a generation. But in Montgomery, during the boycott, his journey as a leader began. The first mass meeting was electric. Thousands of black residents packed into a church, standing shoulder to shoulder, listening to King speak. His words lit fire to their spirits. He told them this was not just about buses, it was about dignity, about justice, about the soul of America. He reminded them of something powerful. They had the numbers. Black residents made up the majority of bus riders in Montgomery. If they stayed off the buses, the system would bleed money. It was a risky strategy, but it was brilliant. And so, the boycott began. Now picture this: tens of thousands of people walking to work every single day. Rain or shine, hot or cold, they walked miles. Teachers, maids, lawyers, janitors, it didn't matter. Some people organized carpool systems, others offered rides in old beat-up cars, but most simply walked. This wasn't a one-day protest. It went on for weeks. Then months. The white establishment thought it would collapse. They thought black riders would. Given. But instead, the boycott only grew stronger. Of course, the backlash came. The city government tried to break the boycott with intimidation. Leaders were arrested. King's house was bombed one night while his wife and baby daughter were inside. Thankfully, they survived. When the crowd of supporters gathered outside, furious and ready to retaliate, King calmed them. He stood on his porch, smoke still rising from his damaged home, and he said, "We must meet hate with love. Remember, we must not retaliate with violence. Those words tested the resolve of the people, but they held. It was this commitment to nonviolence that set the movement apart. The boycott wasn't just about seats on a bus anymore. It was about showing the power of unity, discipline, and peace in the face of hatred. What happened next would shock you. But before I continue, if you haven't subscribed yet, click the button and turn on the bell to get updates of our latest stories. For months, Montgomery's buses ran nearly empty. The bus company was losing money every day. White officials doubled down, but nothing worked. The boycott stretched to over a year, 381 days, to be exact. That's over 12 months of sacrifice, walking, and holding the line. But it was worth it. Because while the city tried everything to stop them, the movement had already captured national attention. Newspapers, television, and radio across the country were covering it. Suddenly, America was watching. The question was no longer local, it was national. Could segregation survive this pressure? Behind the scenes, lawyers for the boycott were fighting in the courts. The legal challenge argued that bus segregation was unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. And finally, in November 1956, the Supreme Court ruled that Montgomery's bus segregation laws were illegal. The highest court in the land had spoken. Segregation on public buses had to end. It was a stunning victory. On December 20, 1956, the boycott was officially declared over. The very next day, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., and many others rode the buses again, not in the back, not under humiliation, but as equals. The boycott had worked. This story, it's about what this victory meant for America. It was proof that ordinary people, when united and disciplined, could challenge an unjust system and win. It was the birth of a larger movement, the civil rights movement, that would go on to fight for schools, voting rights, and an end to Jim Crow segregation across the South. For Martin Luther King Jr., it was the beginning of his role as a national leader. For Rosa Parks, it was the moment her quiet courage turned into a legacy of defiance. And for the Black community in Montgomery, it was the proof that their voices mattered. Now think about it. One woman's no turned into 381 days of resistance. That resistance turned into a Supreme Court victory. That victory turned into a national movement. That movement changed America. Rosa Parks wasn't just tired that day, she was tired of giving into racial discrimination. Dr. King wasn't just a preacher, he was the leader a movement had been waiting for. And the people of Montgomery weren't just passengers, they were warriors for justice. Don't forget to share this video at the end to your friends that are bold and defiant like Rosa Parks, or good in leadership like Martin Luther King Jr. Sometimes the fight isn't quick, it's long, painful, and exhausting. Rosa Parks' small act of defiance became a spark. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words became fuel. And the people's determination became the fire that burned down an unjust system. Today, we can learn from that. Injustice may wear new clothes, but the fight for dignity, fairness, and equality never ends. Each of us has a role to play. Sometimes it starts with a simple act of courage, saying no when everyone expects silence. If you've been inspired by this story, here's my call to you: don't just listen, act. Share this story so others know the power of unity. Comment your thoughts below. What lesson from Rosa Parks and Dr. King inspires you most? Like this video if you believe courage can change the world. And don't forget to subscribe so you can join me for more real stories that shaped our world. Because history isn't just in the past, it's alive, and it's calling us to stand up today.